At 1:47 a.m., Toledo police kicked open my bedroom door with an estate fraud warrant while my father stood in the hallway smiling, and my younger sister filmed my arrest on her phone. She whispered, "Say goodbye to Grandpa's money," as if the $4.6 million Harlow Trust had already become hers. What none of them knew was that the fraud packet their lawyer handed to the police was not my mistake. It was the one envelope I had already logged, copied, watermarked, and delivered to the county probate fraud auditor. They thought the warrant would erase me from Grandpa's trust. What they had really done was hand law enforcement the exact decoy file I had been waiting for them to steal. My name is Wendy Harlow. I was 48 years old that night, barefoot on broken wood splinters from my own bedroom door, with two officers shouting for my hands and my mother standing behind them in a robe she had clearly put on for the performance. My father, Vernon Harlow, stood with his arms folded across his chest like a man watching a problem finally get removed from his property. My mother, Marlene, kept one hand pressed to her throat, not crying, not shaking, just holding the expression she used when church people were watching. My younger sister, Sloane, lifted her phone high enough to catch my face, the officers, the broken door frame, and the handcuffs in one frame. "Everybody is seeing the truth now," she told her live stream. "This is what happens when you steal from family." One officer read the charge from the warrant: suspected estate fraud, suspected falsification of trust records, suspected attempted theft from the Harlow family trust. I did not scream. I did not argue. I did not ask my parents why they were standing in my hallway at nearly 2 in the morning. I looked at the officer holding the evidence receipt and asked one question. "Does the complaint include a tan probate envelope with 12 pages? The officer blinked. My father's smile twitched. Sloane lowered her phone half an inch. It was the first time that night any of them looked uncertain. The officer said, "Ma'am, you can discuss evidence after processing." I nodded and held out my wrists. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let people finish walking into the room you already prepared for them. I worked as a trust account compliance analyst at a credit union. That title never impressed my family. To them, I was not a financial professional. I was not the person who had spent 21 years reading account notes, wire flags, signature cards, deceased account holds, suspicious login records, beneficiary changes, and elder exploitation complaints. I was just Wendy, the paperwork daughter. My father had called me that since I was 30. If a hospital bill needed arguing, they called me. If a bank form needed reading, they called me. If Grandpa could not understand a letter from the county treasurer, they called me. But when the paperwork gave me authority instead of chores, suddenly I was selfish. Suddenly I was unstable. Suddenly I was hiding behind documents. My family had made the same mistake a lot of greedy people make. They believed paperwork was weak because it did not shout. They believed signatures, timestamps, login trails, notary books, and sealed copies were boring, until those things began speaking louder than they could. 3 months before the arrest, I walked into Gordon Vale's estate office for my grandfather's trust reading. The office was on the 9th floor of a glass building near the Maumee River, the kind of place designed to make grief feel expensive. Gray carpet, frosted conference room doors, a long walnut table, diplomas framed in black, a silver coffee service nobody touched. My grandfather, Walter Harlow, had died at 86 after a final year of pill organizers, cardiology appointments, property tax reminders, and quiet Sunday afternoons at his kitchen table. I had been there for most of it. I took him to appointments when my father said he had supplier meetings. I organized his prescriptions when my mother said medical things made her anxious. I sat with him during the long insurance calls while Sloane sent heart emojis into the family chat from restaurants she posted online. I did not do those things because I expected money. I did them because Grandpa had been the only person in my family who noticed quiet work while it was happening. At the conference table that morning, my father sat to my left in his best navy suit, even though he always said dressing up for lawyers was a waste of time. My mother sat beside him with a tissue already folded in her hand. Sloane arrived late, smelling like perfume and cold air, tapping at her phone until Gordon Vale cleared his throat. Gordon was in his late 50s, silver-haired, smooth-voiced, and very good at making people feel that whatever he said had already been approved by a higher authority. He began with the small items: Grandpa's watch to my father, his recipe box to my mother, his fishing photographs to all grandchildren through scanned copies, his truck to be sold and added back to the estate. Then Gordon opened the trust binder. His voice did not change when he said Grandpa had named me sole acting trustee of the Harlow Family Trust. $4.6 million in combined assets, investment accounts, a paid-off duplex on Bancroft Street, a healthcare reserve account that would now roll into the trust, a protected education sub-fund for future descendants. My mother stopped dabbing her eyes. My father leaned back slowly. Sloane's thumb froze above her phone screen. Gordon continued reading, but I saw his eyes flick toward my father before he reached the clause that mattered. If the acting trustee becomes legally incapacitated, materially negligent, or subject to a criminal investigation involving fiduciary misconduct, temporary administrative authority may be transferred to an alternate family committee pending probate review. He paused after that sentence. He did not pause after the tax section. He did not pause after the rental property language. He paused there, and I felt the entire room hear it. My father's fingers began tapping the table. My mother's tissue stopped moving. Sloane looked at him, then at my father. Something passed between them so quickly a person who did not live inside our family might have missed it. I did not miss it. My job was noticing the small moment before fraud became paperwork. After the reading, my family did not ask what Grandpa had wanted. They did not ask what the trustee duties required. They did not ask how the rental income was supposed to be handled or what the education subfund meant. My father followed me into the hallway outside Gordon's conference room and said, "You need to be reasonable about this." That was my father's favorite sentence when he wanted obedience to sound like maturity. I asked him what he meant. He lowered his voice, but not enough. "Your sister has a mortgage closing coming up. Your mother and I have expenses. That trust belongs to the family." I told him the trust had written instructions. His jaw tightened. "Do not hide behind paperwork, Wendy." Sloane laughed behind him. "That is all she has ever hidden behind." My mother touched my sleeve and gave me the sad little smile she used when she wanted to make control look like concern. "Honey, nobody is saying you should have no role. We are saying one person should not control everything. It looks selfish." I looked past them through the glass wall. Gordon Vale was still in the conference room, closing the trust binder very slowly. He was not looking at us, but his shoulders had gone still. He was listening. I did not argue in that hallway. I did not defend myself. I said, "I will follow Grandpa's written instructions," and walked to the elevator. As the doors closed, Sloane called after me, "Enjoy playing banker with money you did not earn." I waited until I reached the parking garage before I took out my phone and created a note titled Harlow Trust Timeline. The first entry was simple: trust reading. Gordon emphasized removal clause. Vernon, Marlene, and Sloane reacted, possible pressure coming. It looked almost silly when I typed it. One note, one date, one observation. But that is how every good case starts, not with drama, with the first fact that refuses to move. My family had always mistaken my quietness for agreement. When I was 22 and paying my own rent with 2 jobs, my father called because Sloane had overdrafted her account and needed $800 before Monday. When I was 29 and studying for a compliance certification after work, my mother asked me to help cover Sloane's divorce attorney because "your sister is too emotional to handle money right now." When Grandpa's legs began swelling and he needed someone to drive him to the cardiologist, everyone agreed I was the practical choice. Practical meant available. Practical meant unpaid. Practical meant the one who would not make a scene. Nobody called it trust when they handed me the hospital folder. Nobody called it leadership when I found the missing insurance adjustment that saved Grandpa $1,700. Nobody called it loyalty when I spent my lunch breaks on hold with Medicare. They called it Wendy being Wendy, dependable when they needed me, difficult when I said no. 4 weeks after the trust reading, the first bank alert came in while I was at my desk. 3 failed login attempts on the trust portal. 1 attempted password reset. Security question triggered. No funds were accessed, but the origin came from a commercial internet block downtown, 2 streets from Gordon Vale's office. I sat completely still while the normal sounds of the credit union moved around me. Printers, phones, keyboard taps, someone laughing near the loan department. My screen showed a login trail that most people would have dismissed as technical noise. I exported the record. I saved a digital copy. I printed a hard copy and wrote the time in the corner. Then I opened the Harlow Trust timeline and added the entry. I did not call Gordon. I did not call my father. People who are warned too early clean up too much. 2 days later, my father called and asked whether I had started distributions yet. Not whether the trust allowed distributions. Not whether I had completed the required review. Whether I had started them, as if the trust were a kitchen faucet and I was standing in front of it just to be cruel. I told him discretionary distributions required review. He exhaled so hard I heard it through the phone. I have a business line coming due, Wendy. Your grandfather knew that. My father owned a small contracting supply company that had looked successful for 30 years because he knew how to keep his truck clean, his invoices vague, and his debts quiet. I had seen enough of Grandpa's old mail to know my father had borrowed from family more than once. Grandpa's trust is not your business reserve, I said. Silence. Then he said, "You watch your tone. I am still your father." Men like Vernon Harlow reach for titles when facts stop helping them. That evening, my mother called. She cried softly and said Sloan was going to lose her new house if the family did not help. The house was a 4-bedroom colonial with a marble kitchen, a 2-car garage, and a mortgage approval that apparently depended on money Sloan had not yet received and had no legal right to promise. "Your sister has children," my mother said. Sloan had 1 teenage stepson who lived mostly with his mother and barely spoke to her. "She needs stability." I asked whether Grandpa had written that the trust was for Sloan's mortgage. The crying stopped. "You have always enjoyed making your sister beg." I wrote that down. Date, time, exact quote. On paper, cruelty loses its perfume. The next week, my father came to the credit union. He did not come to my desk. He went to a teller window and asked whether family trust verification could be prepared for a lender. The teller, who did not handle trust accounts, directed him to me. He left before I came out. That told me 2 things. First, he was already trying to use the trust as financial support for something outside the trust instructions. Second, he did not want a record of me refusing him. Unfortunately for him, the teller entered a note because that is what trained employees do. I printed that too. 2 days later, Sloan texted me a screenshot of a message from her mortgage broker asking for documentation of expected family trust funds. She wrote, "This is time-sensitive. Do not embarrass me." I replied, "There are no approved distributions for your mortgage." She did not answer me directly. Instead, she posted a photo of backsplash samples with the caption, "Some people want to block your blessings, but God sees everything." My mother liked it within 3 minutes. That was when I installed the cameras. Not because I wanted to live like a paranoid person, but because people who believe they are entitled to your life eventually try to enter it without asking. I bought 2 small shelf cameras, 1 door camera, and 1 motion sensor for my home office. I synced every timestamp to cloud storage and tested the angles 3 times. My home office was a converted spare bedroom with a narrow desk, 2 filing cabinets, a printer, and a framed photo of Grandpa at his 70th birthday wearing a paper crown Sloan had put on his head for a picture and removed the second the photo was taken. I placed 1 camera high on the bookshelf facing my desk. Another covered the hallway. The door camera covered the porch and side entry. Then I waited. It took 6 days. At 1:23 on a Thursday afternoon, while I was eating soup at a small restaurant near the credit union, my phone vibrated with a motion alert. I opened the feed and saw Sloan stepping into my house with a key I had not given her. She wore sunglasses on top of her head and moved with the confidence of someone who had already decided privacy did not apply to her. She did not wander. She did not pretend to look for me. She went straight to my office. She opened the top drawer, then the second, then the file box under the printer. When she found the folder marked Trust Working Copies, she smiled. Not a nervous smile, a victory smile. She took pictures of every page with her phone. Then she lifted one document toward the light as if checking whether it was original. I sat in the restaurant with my spoon halfway to my mouth and watched my sister steal from me in real time. Any normal person would have called the police immediately. I nearly did. Then I remembered the removal clause. I remembered Gordon's pause. I remembered my father asking about distributions and Sloane's mortgage broker needing trust verification. If I stopped this now, I might catch my sister. I would not catch the people using her hands, so I kept watching. Sloane stayed inside my house for 14 minutes. Before she left, she stood in my hallway and sent a voice message. The audio from that angle was not perfect, but the camera caught her face and the shape of the words close enough. I got them. Then she locked my door behind her and walked away like she had done nothing wrong. I downloaded the footage twice and saved it in 3 places. When I got home that evening, I did not fix the drawer she had left crooked. I did not move the folder she had half turned. I wanted her to believe she had gotten away with it. People show you much more when they think they are invisible. The next morning, a thick envelope arrived at my house by courier mistake. It was addressed to Vernon Harlow Care of Gordon Vale's office, but my address appeared in the delivery field because someone in Gordon's office had clearly pulled the wrong contact record from the trust file. I did not open mail that was not addressed to me. I did photograph the envelope. Then I called Gordon's office and said, "I believe a courier left something here by mistake." His assistant sounded flustered. "Please do not open that, Ms. Harlow. A courier will retrieve it," I said. "Of course." While I waited, I held the envelope near the window. The paper inside was thin enough that I could read one bold billing line through the outer sheet: emergency fiduciary review and trustee removal preparation. Under that, I could see Gordon Vale's billing header and my father's name. I did not need more. I photographed what could legally be seen from the outside, logged the call, and handed the sealed envelope to the courier when he returned. By then, I knew Gordon was not neutral. He was not simply the estate attorney. He was helping my father prepare the language that would make removing me look responsible. The first open ambush happened at my parents' dining room table on a Sunday evening in late October. My mother invited me by saying she wanted one peaceful dinner before this trust business ruined Thanksgiving. In our family, that meant everyone had rehearsed except me. The dining room looked the same as it had when I was a child. Cherry cabinet, lace runner, crystal bowl nobody used, framed family portraits where Sloane was always near the center and I was usually near the edge. My father sat at the head of the table. My mother sat to his right. Sloane arrived 20 minutes late carrying a bakery box and wearing diamond earrings she had recently claimed she could not afford to insure. Gordon Vale was not there, but his fingerprints were. My father slid a document across the table before dessert. "Temporary authority," he said, "just until everyone feels comfortable." I did not touch the pages. "Who drafted this?" He said, "Do not start." Sloane leaned back. "It is not complicated, Wendy. You sign, Dad and Mom help oversee things, and we stop pretending you are the only person Grandpa trusted." The top page read temporary administrative consent, alternate family committee, emergency access, words that sounded harmless until you understood what they unlocked. My mother softened her voice. "Honey, your sister's mortgage lender is waiting. Your father has business obligations. You can still be involved." Still be involved. As if I had not been the one involved when Grandpa could not climb his porch steps. As if I had not been involved when his duplex tenant stopped paying and someone had to send proper notice. As if involvement only counted when money finally appeared. I pushed the papers back. "No." My father's face hardened. "You are making a mistake." "Then it will be my mistake as trustee." Sloane gave a short laugh. "You work in a credit union back office. Stop acting like you are some kind of financial guardian." There it was, the heart of everything. They did not believe I could protect money because they only respected people who spent it loudly. After that dinner, my mother began working the family like a phone tree. She told Aunt Marcia I seemed overwhelmed. She told 2 women from church that grief had made me controlling. She told a cousin I was refusing transparency. Sloan posted vague messages about elder wishes being ignored, then sent private texts to relatives saying I was hiding accounts. My father wrote in the family group chat that he was worried Walter's legacy was being mishandled. I answered none of it. Instead, I took screenshots, printed them, and added them to the timeline. Then another trust portal alert came through. This time, the attempted password reset used Grandpa's old security answers. Whoever entered them knew the name of his first dog, the street where he grew up, and the wrong answer to his favorite teacher. That mattered. Grandpa's real favorite teacher had been Mrs. Abel. At holidays, he always told the funny story about Mr. Conroy, so family members guessed Mr. Conroy. A stranger would not know either answer. A family member working from dinner table stories would know the wrong one. That afternoon, I called the Lucas County Probate Office and asked for Ms. Larkin. I knew her from 2 elder financial exploitation reviews our credit union had assisted with. Ms. Larkin was not dramatic. She did not gasp or tell me I was brave. She asked for dates. She asked for copies. She asked whether any original trust documents remained in my house. I said no. That was one thing my family never understood. The originals had never been in my desk. They were in a credit union safe deposit box under dual inventory, sealed, witnessed, and logged. Sloan had photographed working copies and thought she had found the treasure room. "Do not accuse them yet," Ms. Larkin said. "Preserve the records. If there is attorney involvement, we need sequence." Sequence was everything. Who knew what? Who touched what? Who submitted what? Fraud is not only the lie. Fraud is the path the lie takes when people decide to make it official. The marked decoy file was not a trap the way movies make traps look. It was not a forged bank record. It did not enter any real financial system. It was a controlled sample packet, printed on plain paper, using retired statement formats, impossible routing numbers, and a watermark sequence that had already been disclosed to Ms. Larkin before anyone touched it. That distinction mattered. I was not creating false evidence to fool the police. I was creating a marked document set to prove who would steal from my home and submit unverified papers as if they were authentic trust records. Ms. Larkin had a sealed reference copy. The credit union fraud department had a memo describing the packet. Page 3 had an extra digit in the account code. Page 7 used a routing number that could not exist. Page 11 included a transfer format our credit union had retired 18 months earlier. Every page carried a faint dot pattern in the footer corresponding to the print date and sequence. To a greedy person, it looked like the smoking gun they wanted. To an auditor, it was a tag. I placed the tan envelope in the center of my home office desk on a Wednesday evening. On top, I wrote Harlow Trust Transfer Review in my own handwriting. Then I turned off the office lamp, left the hallway camera active, and went to work the next morning as usual. I will not pretend that felt easy. There is a particular kind of disgust in allowing someone to violate your space because you need them to reveal the full shape of their dishonesty. I sat in my car in the credit union parking lot with my hand on the door handle and considered going back home, tearing up the packet, changing every lock, and ending it there. But ending it there would only stop Sloan for a week. It would not stop my father from pressuring Gordon. It would not stop my mother from telling people I was unstable. It would not stop the emergency petition they were already preparing. So I went inside. At 2:06 that afternoon, the motion alert came. Sloan entered through the side door, this time wearing a baseball cap pulled low. She moved faster than before, straight to the office, straight to the desk. When she saw the tan envelope, her whole body changed. She looked over her shoulder, took a picture of the cover, opened the packet, flipped through the pages, and smiled before she had read enough to understand anything. That smile told me everything. The packet did not need to be convincing to a banker. It only needed to be useful to people who already wanted me guilty. She slid the entire envelope into her tote bag and left. On the porch, she made a call. The door camera caught her first words clearly. "Gordon, I found it." I forwarded the video to Ms. Larkin with a timestamp note. Decoy packet removed from residence by Sloan Harlow at 2:11 p.m. I copied the credit union fraud contact. I printed the still frame of Sloane putting the envelope into her bag and placed it behind the login alerts in my binder. Then I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table, drank it slowly, and let my hands shake where no one could see them. People like to imagine calm revenge as glamorous. It is not. It is sitting alone with the knowledge that your own sister is trying to destroy you and forcing yourself not to call her screaming. It is choosing the future over the relief of one emotional outburst. 72 hours before my arrest, Gordon Vale sent me a formal letter accusing me of refusing reasonable family oversight and warning that irregular financial movement had raised concerns about my fitness as trustee. He did not describe the documents in detail, but I recognized the shape of the accusation. My father called 3 times and left no message. My mother texted, "We can still keep this inside the family if you do the right thing." Sloane posted another photo of her future kitchen and wrote, "New chapter loading." That evening, Ms. Larkin called. Her voice was steady but not casual. "Ms. Harlow, if they take this to local law enforcement before the probate review, there may be a short period where officers act on the complaint before the file is reconciled." I asked, "Do you mean I could be arrested?" She paused. "I mean you should not be surprised by procedural consequences." Government language for yes. I looked around my kitchen while she spoke. The blue mug in the sink, the grocery list on the refrigerator, the old wooden chair where Grandpa used to sit when I brought him over for soup. "What do you need from me?" I asked. "Preserve everything. Do not interfere with their submission. If contacted by police, comply. Do not volunteer details without counsel or this office being notified. The important issue is that they use it." They use it. That was the line. Theft was one thing. Submitting stolen, unverified, marked documents to police and probate court was another. My family needed to cross that line themselves. That night, I packed a small bag with medication, glasses, a phone charger, and a list of numbers. I placed my full timeline binder in the safe deposit box and kept only Ms. Larkin's card in my wallet. I checked the camera backups. I checked the locks. Then I sat on the edge of my bed and did not sleep. At 1:39 a.m., the porch camera detected motion. I did not open the app. I already knew. At 1:47, the front door shook under 3 hard knocks, followed by voices identifying themselves as police. Before I reached my bedroom doorway, wood cracked in the hall. Later, I learned the warrant permitted forced entry because Gordon's complaint claimed financial records were at risk of destruction. That detail was his. I knew it the second the frame splintered. The officers entered fast, flashlights up, voices loud, trained to control the room before the room controlled them. I raised my hands. One officer said, "Wendy Harlow?" I said yes. He said I was being detained on a warrant related to suspected estate fraud. Behind him, my father stepped into view, dressed too neatly for a man supposedly pulled from bed by concern. My mother stood beside him. Sloane was already filming. "Say goodbye to Grandpa's money," she whispered. I looked at the officer holding the paperwork and asked about the tan probate envelope. He did not understand the question. My family did. My father's smile flickered. Sloane's phone dipped. My mother's eyes moved to Vernon just once. That single second was enough to tell me the packet had been used. Booking was not dramatic. No alarm, no red screen, no heroic entrance by federal agents. Real life rarely announces truth that loudly. A tired officer inventoried my wallet, keys, and phone. Another entered my name into the system. A detective with short gray hair and reading glasses on a chain reviewed the evidence intake. She opened the tan envelope, counted the pages, and frowned. 12, she said. Then she looked at the case note again. Was probate already notified on this trust? A younger officer checked a different screen and said, "There is a county flag." The detective turned slightly. "What kind of flag?" He read quietly, and the room shifted. I could not see the screen, but I saw attention move away from me and toward the envelope. The detective came to the holding area window. "Ms. Harlow, why did you ask about this packet at the house?" I said, "Because that packet should match a sealed marked reference copy already held by Ms. Larkin at the probate office." She asked who Ms. Larkin was. I gave the number from memory. 30 minutes later, I sat alone in a holding room with a paper cup of water while two officers discussed chain of custody outside the door. I heard fragments: prior disclosure, marked packet, possible false submission, attorney complaint. My wrists hurt from the cuffs. My house door was broken. Sloane's video was probably moving through my family like poison. Still, for the first time that night, I breathed all the way in. While I was in custody, my family celebrated. Sloane posted a clipped version of my arrest with the caption, "Grandpa deserved justice." My mother wrote in the family group chat that she was heartbroken, but relieved the truth was coming out. My father sent relatives a message saying the trust would soon be placed under responsible family oversight. Gordon Vale filed an emergency petition at 9:04 that morning to remove me as trustee, attaching the same 12-page packet as evidence of misconduct. He included Sloane's sworn statement that she had found the documents during a good faith attempt to locate missing family records. That phrase was so Gordon Vale, it might as well have worn cufflinks. I was released shortly after noon, not cleared, not free of the process, but released pending review because the local complaint now conflicted with a prior probate fraud inquiry. The detective handed my belongings back in a plastic bag. "You will hear from the county office," she said. She did not apologize. I did not need her to. She was not the person who owed me one. When I stepped outside, winter air cut through my shirt. My friend Beverly from the credit union waited in her car. Ms. Larkin had called my office after the arrest became part of the case file. Beverly did not ask if I was okay. She knew better. She handed me a coffee and said, "Your front door is being repaired. I called a locksmith." That was when I nearly cried. Not in the police station. Not in the holding room. In the passenger seat of Beverly's beige sedan, holding terrible coffee because someone had fixed a door without making me beg. The emergency probate hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. That gave my family 2 days to enjoy the story they thought they had created. They used every hour. Sloane's video reached relatives, neighbors, old classmates, women from my mother's church circle, and at least one person connected to her mortgage office. She thought it made me look guilty. She did not understand that public accusations become evidence too. My mother left me one voicemail. "Wendy, if you had just let us help, none of this would be happening. Your father and Gordon are trying to protect what is left." What is left? She spoke as if I had already burned something down. My father sent one text. "Sign the temporary authority before the hearing, and we may be able to contain this." I stared at the word contain for a long time. He was not worried about truth. He was worried about damage control. I forwarded it to Ms. Larkin. On Friday, I went to the credit union and reviewed the safe deposit inventory with 2 employees present. The original trust documents were intact. The sealed inventory was intact. No funds had moved. No wire had been initiated. No distribution had been approved. The only suspicious activity was external. Login attempts, password resets, a father trying to request trust verification, a sister removing documents from my home, and an attorney submitting a marked packet without verifying its source. I printed the confirmation and placed it in a new binder labeled hearing copy. They had given police 12 pages of lies. I would answer with dates, logs, signatures, and the absence of missing money. The Lucas County Probate Court conference room did not look like the kind of place where a family breaks. It looked like a place where people discuss guardianship forms under bad ceiling lights. A long rectangular table filled the center. A state seal hung on one wall. A clock ticked too loudly above a cabinet stacked with binders. I arrived 10 minutes early with Beverly beside me as a witness. Ms. Larkin was already there, arranging folders with the calm efficiency of someone who had watched too many families discover money inside grief. The magistrate entered next, then a bank trust officer named Mr. Dalton, then a clerk with a recorder. My family arrived together. My father wore the same navy suit from the trust reading. My mother wore pearls and carried tissues. Sloane wore a cream coat and looked at me with soft pity, performing sadness for the room. Gordon Vale entered last, leather portfolio in hand, expression smooth, chin lifted. He nodded to the magistrate. He nodded to Ms. Larkin. He did not look at me. Gordon spoke first. He called the matter unfortunate. He called my behavior concerning. He said the family had discovered documents indicating improper transfers and possible concealment of trust assets. He said my arrest, while painful, demonstrated the seriousness of the issue. My father spoke next about duty, responsibility, and his deep concern that grief had affected my judgment. My mother cried quietly into a tissue and said she only wanted Walter's legacy protected. Sloane said she never wanted to get involved, but when she saw what I was hiding, she knew she had to speak up. I listened with my hands folded on the table. There is discipline in letting people finish lying. Interrupt too soon, and they can pretend they were misunderstood. Let them complete the sentence, and they have to live inside it. When Gordon placed the 12-page packet on the table, Ms. Larkin asked him to confirm it was the evidence attached to his emergency petition. He said yes. She asked Sloane whether it was the same packet she had given her father and Mr. Vale. Sloane glanced at Gordon, then said yes, adding that she found it while trying to help locate family records. Ms. Larkin wrote that down. Then she opened her folder. "For the record," she said, "this packet matches a marked duplicate document set disclosed to my office before its removal from Ms. Harlow's residence." Gordon's expression did not change immediately. My father's did. He looked at Sloane. Sloane looked at the packet. My mother stopped moving her tissue. Ms. Larkin projected page 1 onto the screen. At first, the footer looked blank. Then she adjusted the contrast, and the faint dot pattern appeared. This watermark corresponds to a print sequence generated by Ms. Harlow 3 days before the police complaint. A sealed reference copy was received by my office before this packet was submitted to law enforcement or this court. Gordon said, "I was not aware of any watermark." Ms. Larkin looked at him. "That is not the concern. The concern is that this packet was not produced from trust records, bank records, or any authorized financial system. It was removed from Ms. Harlow's private residence." Then she clicked to the next image. Sloane, standing in my office, sliding the tan envelope into her tote bag. The room went completely quiet, not shocked noisy, not dramatic, quiet, the kind of quiet that leaves nowhere to hide. Sloane spoke first. "I had a key." It was a terrible answer, but panic rarely chooses good ones. Ms. Larkin said, "A key is not authorization to enter a trustee's residence and remove trust-related documents." My father said she was trying to protect the family. The magistrate said, "Mr. Harlow, let the auditor finish." Ms. Larkin moved to the login records. 3 failed trust portal attempts, 1 password reset, 1 access attempt using family-known security answers. The commercial IP block appeared on the screen, mapped near Gordon Vale's office building. Gordon objected immediately, saying proximity did not prove his office initiated anything. Ms. Larkin nodded as if she had expected that. Then she displayed the billing reference, emergency fiduciary review, trustee removal preparation. Fraud referral packet. Vernon Harlow billed by Gordon Vale's office 2 days before the first login attempt. My father turned red from the collar up. My mother whispered, "Vernon." It was the first honest sound I had heard from her in weeks. Ms. Larkin continued. She displayed the temporary authority document Gordon had drafted and my father had slid across the dining room table. There was no proper notary entry, no witness receipt, no formal service, no court review, just a document designed to look official enough to pressure me into surrendering authority. Then Mr. Dalton, the bank trust officer, confirmed there had been no unauthorized wire initiated by me, no trust funds moved by me, no hidden distribution approved by me, and no missing money. The account hold existed because of external access attempts and contested documents submitted by my family's attorney. He used the words my father had feared without understanding them. Fraud hold. That was when Sloane's phone buzzed on the table. She looked down before she could stop herself. Her face changed. The message preview was visible from where she sat, and even I could read the first words. Closing suspended pending trust verification. Her mortgage broker had just discovered that the money she had been promising did not exist for her. She had expected to leave that room closer to her new kitchen. Instead, she was watching the door close on a house she had already shown off online. Gordon tried to recover. He argued that even if the packet's source was disputed, concerns remained about my judgment because I had created a decoy instead of immediately reporting family conflict. Ms. Larkin answered before I could. Ms. Harlow did report. She disclosed attempted access, document removal, and possible attorney conflict before the packet was used. She preserved evidence. She did not move trust assets. She did not initiate public accusations. She complied with police after a complaint based on the marked packet was submitted against her. The magistrate looked at Gordon. Mr. Vale, did you verify the source of these documents before attaching them to an emergency petition and forwarding them through a criminal complaint? Gordon said, I relied on family representations. The magistrate's expression hardened. You are an attorney in a fiduciary matter. That is not an answer. I looked at my father. For the first time in my life, he did not look angry. He looked smaller, not sorry, just smaller. Like a man realizing the room had stopped accepting his voice as evidence. The emergency petition was denied. I remained trustee. The Harlow Trust stayed under fraud hold, not because I had stolen from it, but because my family had tried to force access through stolen and unverified evidence. The magistrate referred Gordon Vale's conduct to the state bar and directed Ms. Larkin to forward the packet history to the county prosecutor for review. The police report that led to my arrest was amended to include disputed evidence and possible false submission. My father's requested family committee authority was rejected. My mother's proposed monthly distribution was paused pending review. Sloane's expected trust-backed mortgage letter was declared unsupported. It all happened in formal language, which made it more devastating. No one shouted. No one called them thieves. No one needed to. The clerk typed. The recorder blinked red. The magistrate signed the order. Papers moved from one side of the table to the other, and with each page, my family lost something they thought belonged to them. Control, credibility, access, narrative. When the hearing ended, Gordon packed his portfolio with stiff hands and left without speaking to my family. My father finally turned to me. Wendy, he said, using the voice he used when he wanted a favor to sound like reconciliation. I stood. Not here. My mother reached for me. Honey, we did not know Gordon would take it that far. I looked at her hand until she lowered it. You stood in my hallway while I was handcuffed. Her face crumpled, but I could not tell if it was grief or embarrassment. Sloane's eyes were wet, but her voice was sharp. You set me up. That sentence had been waiting inside her all morning. I turned to her. No, Sloane, I labeled the file. You stole it. Beverly inhaled softly behind me. My sister had no answer. For once, neither did my father. The weeks after the hearing were not clean or cinematic. Consequences rarely arrive all at once. They arrive as letters, holds, delayed closings, canceled meetings, and people suddenly learning to speak carefully. Gordon Vale's name disappeared from 2 community boards before the state bar even announced an inquiry. My father's business lender requested additional collateral documentation after the fraud hold became part of the trust record. My mother stopped posting quotes about family loyalty. Sloane deleted the arrest video, then claimed she had only shared it because she was scared. But screenshots had moved faster than regret. Relatives who had questioned me began sending strange little messages. Not apologies exactly, more like weather reports from people hoping not to be blamed for standing under the wrong cloud. Aunt Marcia wrote, I did not realize there was more to the story. A cousin wrote, your mom made it sound different. One old neighbor left a voicemail saying she always knew I was the responsible one, which was not true, but I let it sit unheard in my deleted folder. My father called once. I did not answer. He left a message. His voice was rough but still proud. This has gone far enough. You made your point. Release the hold so your sister does not lose her house. I played it twice, not because I needed to hear it, but because I wanted to be certain he had not accidentally included the words I am sorry. He had not. I forwarded the voicemail to Ms. Larkin and saved a copy. Then I blocked his number for 30 days. Blocking him felt less dramatic than I expected. It felt like turning off a machine that had been humming in the walls for years. My mother came to my house on a Friday afternoon after the door had been repaired. I saw her on the camera before she knocked. She stood on the porch holding a casserole dish covered in foil, the universal language of mothers who want to enter without discussing what they broke. I did not open the door right away. I watched her shift her weight, glance toward the street, and smooth her hair. When I finally opened it, I kept the chain in place. Her eyes moved to it. Pain flashed across her face, but she did not get to use pain as proof of innocence anymore. "I brought dinner," she said. "I did not ask for dinner. Can we talk like mother and daughter?" That almost worked. Not because I believed her, but because there is a child inside every grown woman who still wants her mother to choose her without being forced by evidence. I said, "You watch them take me out of my house." Her eyes filled. I was scared. "Of me." She looked down at the casserole. Of what would happen to the family. There it was again. The family. That invisible creature I had been fed to my entire life. "Something did happen to the family," I said. "The truth got recorded." She flinched. "You sound so cold." Cold was what they called me when I refused to bleed on schedule. I told her all trust contact had to go through official channels, and she could not come to my house without asking first. She stared at the chain like it was a personal insult. "Your grandfather would hate this." That was the first thing she said that made me angry. Grandpa wrote the trust this way because he knew exactly who would try to empty it. Her face changed just enough to tell me some part of her knew it was true. I closed the door before she could answer. The casserole stayed on the porch until evening. I threw it away without removing the foil. Sloane lost the house. Not immediately, and not because I called anyone to punish her. She lost it because her financing depended on a letter suggesting future access to trust funds she did not control. Once the fraud hold froze distributions and the court refused to remove me, the lender asked for independent funds. She did not have them. For 3 days, she posted nothing. Then she returned with a vague message about betrayal, closed doors, and choosing peace. I did not respond. My father's business line went into review. He had to submit collateral records he had apparently hoped to avoid. My mother began calling Beverly at the credit union until Beverly politely told her all family trust questions needed to go through probate or counsel. Gordon Vale sent one letter through his attorney, denying wrongdoing and suggesting that all parties may have misunderstood the evidentiary posture. I laughed when I read that line. Evidentiary posture was lawyer language for caught holding the wrong bag. Ms. Larkin told me the process could take months. The bar inquiry, the prosecutor review, the trust accounting, the amended police report, all of it would move at the speed of institutions, which meant slowly, carefully, and with far less emotional satisfaction than people imagine. But I did not need speed anymore. The important thing had already happened. My family no longer had access to the trust. They no longer had access to my house. They no longer had access to the old version of me who would explain, soften, fix, and absorb. The paperwork daughter had finally let the paperwork speak, and the room had listened. A month after the hearing, I returned to the safe deposit room at the credit union with the final updated inventory. The room was small and plain, with beige walls, a metal table, and boxes that looked too ordinary to hold anyone's future. Beverly stood with me as the second employee witness. We opened the box and checked the original trust documents. Then I added the court order denying emergency removal, the fraud hold notice, the amended police report reference, and Ms. Larkin's receipt for the marked decoy copy. I placed everything inside a new manila envelope. On the front, in black ink, I wrote Harlow Trust, Protected Records. Then I stamped the inventory page with the red internal hold stamp. The sound echoed softly in the little room. For years, my family had treated documents as obstacles, things to pressure around, ignore, or shove in front of me when they wanted my signature. Grandpa had understood them differently. He understood that the right document, signed while a person was still clear, could protect the truth after everyone else started lying. I thought of him sitting at his kitchen table, pushing his glasses up his nose, asking me whether a beneficiary form needed one witness or two. I used to tease him for being cautious. Now I wished I could tell him caution had saved everything. Beverly slid the metal box back into place. I turned the key once. When we stepped out, she held out her hand for the second witness key, and I placed it in her palm. My own key went into my pocket, not my father's pocket, not my mother's kitchen drawer, not Sloane's emergency key ring. Mine. That evening, I went home to a quiet house with a repaired door frame and new locks. The hallway looked normal again, but I still saw the arrest when I passed the bedroom. The flashlight, the officer's voice, my father's smile, Sloane's phone. Trauma does that. It leaves a second version of the room inside the first one. But this time, when I walked through, I did not feel powerless. I made tea, sat at my kitchen table, and opened the Harlow Trust timeline one last time. The document had grown from one small note into pages of dates, quotes, screenshots, access logs, photographs, and official references. At the top was the first line I had written after Gordon Vale's office: family herd removal clause, watch behavior. At the bottom, I typed, emergency removal denied, trust protected. No family access without court review. Then I saved it and closed the file. My phone buzzed once. A text from an unknown number. It was Sloane. You ruined everything. I looked at those 3 words for a long time, then I typed back, no. I stopped helping you ruin me. I blocked the number before she could answer. Outside, a car passed slowly on the street. The house settled around me. For the first time in months, there was no hidden camera alert, no family group chat, no lawyer letter waiting on the counter. Just quiet. Not the cold silence my family used as punishment. A clean quiet. A quiet I had earned. People think revenge is the moment someone else falls apart. It is not. At least not the kind that lasts. Real revenge is getting your name back on the record. It is sleeping behind a door no one else has a key to. It is watching the people who called you unstable get corrected by a timestamp. It is letting a magistrate, a bank officer, and a probate auditor say what you spent years trying to explain at dining room tables where nobody listened. My father thought authority lived in his voice. My mother thought guilt could still open my door. My sister thought a phone camera could turn a lie into truth if enough people watched it. Gordon Vale thought legal language could make theft look like concern. They were all wrong. The truth was never loud in my story. It sat in login records, in watermarks, in notary books, in a hidden camera still, in a safe deposit inventory, waiting for the right room. I am still the paperwork daughter. I do not hate that name anymore. Paperwork protected my grandfather's last wishes. Paperwork stopped my family from draining what he built. Paperwork turned a midnight arrest into a false evidence review. And when I locked the safe deposit box that day and put the key in my own pocket, I finally understood what Grandpa had really left me. Not just a trust, not just money, a boundary with signatures on it, a way to say no that did not need to shake, shout, or apologize. My family said goodbye to Grandpa's money at 1:47 a.m. They just did not know they were saying it to themselves.